everybody, and welcome back to another episode of the Invincible After Show, brought to you by Agents of Fandom. As always, I am one of your hosts, TJ AKA Fat Thor, and I am joined by my amazing co-host, Sean Mott from Metalcore Nerds, Collider, and also, obviously, Agents of Fandom. Sean, how you doing today?
Prepare for my arrival, worms. It's time. That's all I got.
It's past time, dude. It was time, but I'm still recovering. TJ, how you doing, man?
Sean, I thought you were stronger. I'm gonna be honest. I thought you were stronger. Looking forward to breaking this one down with you guys. I didn't think I was gonna make it. I am out of town. I'm not in my normal house, but I brought my microphone with me. I got my laptop. The internet is really good. So we're here. We're ready to talk about the season 3 finale of Invincible. What a great final 2 episodes it was. Like truly, truly incredible final 2 episodes of this season.
Just the 1-2 punch, man. Something we talked about in the previous episodes. Did we think they were going to go there? And oh boy, did they go there. And just really quickly, we could not have done this without you, Tej. You've been with us this whole time, so I'm more than happy we were able to work out you being here today. But I mean, there's a lot to talk about. It's like, it feels like there's not much to talk about because basically the whole episode is just a huge fight, which, I mean, what more can you
30
ask
minutes.
for? Yeah, 30 minutes of just punching and throwing each other through buildings. So obviously, I think we are all in agreement. We loved this episode. So instead of asking like, oh, what we thought of it, I kind of want to go around like, what was just like your favorite moment from this episode, whether it was, you know, a big moment, maybe one of the more subtle ones that we always love to talk about. Sean, I'll throw it off to you first on this one.
I mean, obviously the fight is incredible and awesome, and you can really tell they stepped up the game as far as like I know like Invincible has like weird animation critique people are all about talking about how the animation sucks, but I feel like if you watch this episode and say it sucks, I think you're insane. But I think honestly one of my favorite moments, especially like rewatching it again, is at Rex's funeral after Eve and Mark are talking and you see him like smile. And he's basically just like, I'm so happy you're alive, you know, and you finally see him. I don't know. It's like there's a lot of growth to his character this season. You know, the whole season placates on him feeling guilty about killing Angstrom, only for him to be alive. And then the series ending or the season ending with him being like, I'm going to kill anyone that threatens the people I love, is such a wild like character arc. And you know, at the end of the day, like the dude is a kind-hearted, good version of Mark. We've seen evil versions of Mark, but now he realizes kind of the stakes and the level of his adversaries, and he knows like he's like, I gotta take care of some of these guys. And it's that's a pretty heavy thing to deal with. Again, it's like funny now that Daredevil Born Again started, it's like that conversation is very prevalent in that too. So it's like kind of cool to see the same kind of conversations happen at very different levels of superhero-dom, I guess. You know, like one's very ground level, grounded, like more lifelike, and then another one also is grounded, but you know, there's aliens and Superman like people around and everything like that. So it's been this season is like, I think it's the best season of Invincible. I've heard a few people echo that sentiment, but I really do think as far as like storytelling, I feel like the and I've always loved, like, obviously we had the same show last season and everything like that, but I really do think that the series has kind of caught its stride as far as like handling storytelling. And like even last season they like messed around with doing part 1 and part 2 and everything like that. So it's been really cool to see the show continue to progress. And someone made this very interesting point that I did not think of until someone pointed it out, but season 1 is kind of like, it's very Omni-Man focused, and obviously Mark is the title character and is a big part, but like Omni-Man is a big part of season 1. And even in season 2, he does have like a big kind of inclusion in it. And this season is very light on Omni-Man. And it really does see Mark as like the main character. And I think it's like we finally to a point where it can do that. and he's like a very complex, interesting, not just like a surface level character. Not that he ever was, but the amount of stuff this dude has been through, like, it's constantly every episode. We say it's like after every episode, I'm like, I feel so bad for this guy. Like he can never win. Like it's always just something that's terrible. Especially this season.
It's like,
this
how
season
much worse can it get?
I know. And that's what I'm worried. I'm like, I know we're only like a third of the way into like the story of like what it's covered versus the comics. And I'm like, how can it get worse than this? Like, how is it gonna get crazier? Like, it makes me so worried. Worried is, I think, the word of the day. Worried for what's gonna.
Especially like you said, I mean, what a way to end off a season, to have your main character, your main hero, basically being like, yeah, I'm gonna kill people now. Like, that's insane. And I'm pretty sure we've talked about this before, and people can look this up. Kirkman has said numerous times, and has used the example of like Mark's blue suit is basically like Peter Parker's Venom suit arc, right? So we know that we've already seen this a little bit when he decides that it's time to kill Angstrom Levy, for example, that he is going down this more ruthless path, similar to Omni-Man. And I really love that point you bring up about how this season is very singularly focused on Mark. Because again, your point's great about showing that progression. But TJ, obviously same question, favorite moment from this episode? And also I want to ask, which I kind of forgot to ask Sean, but I don't know if you've read this part of the comics or if you were aware of this part of the comics, but coming in as someone fresh, like how shocking was this fight? Were you expecting it to be as extensive as it actually was?
I was, because I didn't know anything about Conquest from reading, but I did see him teased a lot on social media as like, this guy's coming and you got to be afraid when this guy comes to your planet, kind of thing. And so I did know that this was going to be a big bad that was going to be taking up a large portion of time. And I thought the fight was incredible. I think, to no one's surprise, my favorite was finally getting our Adam Eve power up, like getting that in the fight. That was
amazing.
Number one for me by far. My girl has been struggling in fights throughout the season. Anytime somebody more powerful comes, she's just throwing up her pink sheets of glass. And it's like, come on, Eve. We all know that you can do better. And so getting to see her fight Conquest and hold her own was great, until obviously things weren't going quite as well. And then we get to see Eve have her, Jean Grey moment. Oh shit, my powers are being unlocked, and just really go all out. So that was my favorite part for sure. Going back to what Sean said about maybe this perhaps being the best season of Invincible, I don't know that I'm quite ready to say that yet. I will say I think this had the best episodes of any season. To me, the highs were the highest of any season for sure. The lows were a little slow for me here, and I would have to kind of go back and rewatch the first two seasons to really compare. But I definitely think this is in the conversation for best season, and I'm just not quite ready to lock it in yet. But I will say for sure, this season had the best episodes of the series. Like, there's 3 or 4 episodes, specifically these last two, but 3 or 4 in total that were just like, damn, I think that was a 10 out of 10 episode of television.
10 out of 10 for sure. Like you said, especially these last 2 episodes. But I'm going to agree with Sean here. This is, I think, by far my favorite season. And I think, too, I'm sure if you ask 10 different people, they'll have 10 different opinions on this. But I personally thought the pacing of this season was probably the best of the previous 2 seasons. It felt very, like Sean was saying, focused on Mark, kind of kept this kind of same through line. And I definitely agree. I think this is my favorite season so far. But I mean, we got to get into it. This fight, I mean, it's like it's hard to even talk about because it's just punching and blood and going through windows and buildings. But one point I
And
want to bring
people.
up, yes, and people, which is a
Ugh.
point I really do want to bring up because that's something not really highlighted in the comics, and I thought that really added to how devastating this battle was. But I want to ask you about the blood heart because I think that might be my favorite moment from the episode. Like, holy crap, that was terrifying. And so, like, this does not happen in the book. They fight each other into space exactly the same, but then they just, come right back down to Earth. So that part doesn't happen. But I mean, just emphasizes how brutal and how much Conquest just enjoys this so much. Sean, I'll throw it off to you first. Again, kind of same, I'll throw the same question at you too, since I didn't ask you the first time. But along with all this, like, not knowing who Conquest was, or maybe a little bit, were you expecting again this level of just like brutality and just the length of this fight?
Yeah, I think so. I think I was, especially if it was following what happened in the Invincible War. I'm like, oh, this has to be insane. And like both of us, all of us kind of talked about it. We're like, oh, we only got the first 6 episodes at first. And we're like, oh, the last 2 episodes must be crazy. And boy, were we right for sure. I guess I didn't think it would be as long because it, like I said, it's literally 30 minutes of a fight. There's stuff kind of intertwined, but it's mostly the fight, and it's pretty wild. And yeah,
And
what
it
Pierre
doesn't
said,
feel
like,
like it.
no,
It doesn't
you're
feel
just
like
like it
30
just
minutes.
keeps
It
going and going
blisters
and
by.
going. Yeah. And what Pierre said, like the beach scene, I was like, oh my god, it's like the train scene, but worse. I was like,
Yeah.
Jesus. Oh, I was like, no, Mark, no, no. And I am wondering now that these last 2 things have happened. I'm creating a bunch of Hueys, Jesus. I am wondering now with like the world seeing a bunch of Invincibles came to attack Earth, and now this other guy came and he's fighting Invincible. Like, are people going to start turning on Invincible? Like, that's what I'm like, is Angstrom's plan gonna kind of come to fruition a little bit? And that's what I'm wondering about. Like, obviously Mark struggles with that hard, and you see a little bit of it at the end of last episode. And I don't know if we talked about this with the whole Powerplex thing, where they kind of like held Powerplex down and were like, oh, just let him drain out his powers. But he was like, this is all your fault. And he's like, yeah, it is, so it's, I'm interested to see how that carries on going in to season 4. But yeah, this fight was the blood heart thing, so psycho. And can we talk about like the meta nature of this fight? Of it being Stephen Yeun and Jeffrey Dean Morgan from The Walking Dead, like Glenn finally got his revenge back, like even the ending, it kind of feels like it.
In more ways than one, too, because we talked about how this show is similar in so many ways to Dragon Ball Z, but with like different twists on the characters and the plot. And this very much does feel like Vegeta has finally come to Earth and he's ready to, mess some things up, but in a very Dragon Ball-esque fight that lasts 30 plus minutes. In Dragon Ball, though, it would be like 17 hours and 4 minutes. But he says specifically, there's a moment where he says, getting mad isn't going to make you stronger. That's not how this works. Where it's like, that is very much how it works in Dragon Ball Z. And so that to me was a very specific, like, we have odes to the different projects, but we're doing our own thing.
Yeah, I don't know much about Dragon Ball, but this fight definitely reminded me of the end fight in Never Back Down. I mean, it was like a 1-to-1.
You got me. I wasn't expecting it at all. I wasn't expecting it.
But again, I mean, I want to bring up Pierre's point because this is something I was going to bring up, but let's just get right into it because I think it adds into all of this. But again, the parallels between Conquest and Nolan and like what Nolan did to Mark and like just turning that up to 11 again, kind of showing how strong and how dangerous Conquest really is. And again, like if you look at that scene, it's literally just the train scene, but on the beach. And like you guys already pointed out, throughout the episode, we see people just like falling from, like, there's one scene where they're like, Conquest is standing over him and literally just a body just like bloop right behind him, just randomly. And again, I think it just further the classic saying, you know, show don't tell. It's like in the books, like obviously we know a lot of people are probably dying during that, but to actually see it really kind of brings that home. And TJ, I want to ask you,
just losing his family and getting his arm ripped off in the process, and you just see him being like,
yeah, literally, and that kid, dude, that was probably the worst. You speaking of the Huey moment,
I hope he comes back as a super villain.
Yeah, that kid is for sure turning into Huey. But then we get Oliver coming into this fight, which is like, okay, bad news. I mean, he did okay against the Maulers, but we see how powerful Conquest is. And then one of my other favorite parts, you kind of talked about how he's like kind of egging him on throughout this whole fight, but when he like literally does not let Mark surrender, like he starts choking, so he like cannot say the words "I surrender" because he again is just loving it so much. So TJ, take it away again. What did you think of? Were you afraid for Oliver as soon as he went out there?
No, because we've had discussions and I've seen online how Oliver becomes a little shit disturber throughout this series. And so I know he is already, but I just have a feeling that he's going to get worse for him. And so I did think that there would be a little plot armor with him. And so no matter how bad things got, he'd be okay. But man, when he got all his teeth knocked out, it was like, shit, bro, you are in so
when he spits him up
over your head. And poor sweet Debbie, knowing this is not going to go well, but also knowing that there's no way she's going to keep him away. Like, he's going no matter what she says. So she gives him just the best advice she possibly can. Like, be quick, stay as far away as you can. Go in there, get a punch in, get out. And if it's too much, like, you got to get out of there. And thankfully, Cecil is able to get Oliver out of there in time. But, like, man, he really didn't provide much help to the fight.
Yeah, I mean, he like gave Mark maybe like 2 seconds to breathe, which Conquest even points. He's like, "You're a freaking idiot. You should have taken that 10 seconds to recover, and now I'm just going to kill you even more." But Sean, same kind of thing. And also I want to emphasize a little bit of the point TJ brought up with Debbie, because that's something that does not have, like, Oliver just dips. Debbie doesn't even have time to say anything to him. So again, a theme that we talk a lot about on this show is how, you know, the show gives Debbie a lot more importance, involves her a lot. So what did you think of Debbie giving Oliver the okay when in past episodes we saw how I guess scared you would say of Oliver becoming a hero?
Yeah, I mean, it's great. Like, I love hearing all the changes from the comic, from the page to the screen for Debbie, and making her just an overall, like, way more interesting and stronger character. And I mean, it makes sense. Like, she gets it. Like, she was married to a superhero. Her son's been a superhero for a few years now. And then now she has this new kid and has to, like, understand that he's going to do this no matter what. So why fight the inevitable? You know, just kind of give him some advice to hope he helps, which the advice is not sticking, Oliver said. I do love how they show when he first gets to them, like, they are so fast, he can't even keep up with them. Like, I was like, oh my God, he should not be here. And to add to the teeth scene, when he's getting, like, stretched and, like, the sound of his, like, body, like, coming apart, I was like, because probably in the back of my head, I was like, there's no way this kid is dying. But at that point, I was like, this dude's getting ripped in half. Like, I fully
like, are they going to go there?
To get straight up ripped in half. And like I've seen crazier things in this world. Maybe they just sewed him back up, and since he's part Viltrumite, he'll just be fine. But like I was like, he's getting ripped in half. Like I was, it's happening, and just major props to Jeffrey Dean Morgan for the sadistic nature of this guy. Because wow, he's like, this is amazing as he's ripping a little boy in half. Like that is so messed up, man.
Yeah, like
you say that
you
say that, but you've never been a teacher, and so I understand it. You know, I understand it. Sometimes little kids get under your skin, and I was kind of hoping I was muted for that, so that joke stayed as like inside voice and not outside voice, but I wasn't. So here we are.
Hey, we all
out there.
I don't know. I was gonna say we can all relate to Conquest in some ways, but kids can be little shits. I'll agree with that for sure. But I mean, like you said, Sean, like the
fully kidding. By the way, we at Agents of Fandom here do not endorse violence of any kind, but especially against children.
Yes, absolutely. Thank you for that.
But especially against children.
Especially 100%. But just like that's kind of a question I want to ask you guys too. Not really a question, just something I think just adds so much to the episodes. But again, like how much Conquest is just like loving this. Like he is just like he says in the episode, I crave my fists being drenched in blood, and just his pure enjoyment throughout this entire fight. Sean, I'll throw it to you on this one. Like, again, like, I don't know. I don't even know what the question is on that, but just like I said, what do you think of how sick Conquest was, I guess?
It's so crazy because I think he knew he was going to die here for some reason. Because he could have killed
I don't
Mark
think he knew
at many times.
I think he wanted to. I think he's been waiting for a worthy opponent, you know? Like I think he's been waiting for somebody to or that too.
I say he just loves fighting and committing violence, and if he dies doing that, all the better. And then I feel like because we will talk about this character a little bit later on, but he has a lot of parallels to Battle Beast, which obviously is another very violent character. But to me, I think that's the one thing that makes them different. The distinction between them is exactly what you're saying, TJ, is Battle Beast is looking for someone like worthy to beat him. And like to him, it's an honorable thing that he's doing in his mind. But Conquest just loves to kill people and just do terrible things, which there is a very, very interesting added scene that adds a lot of context to what we're talking about, but I want to save that for now. But TJ, I'm going to throw this to you first because I know this was your favorite part of the episode. Also, one of my favorite parts. Again, another added scene that is not in the comics. Eve versus Conquest. This is completely different. Eve, spoiler alert, I hope you watched the episode before you came here, but Eve basically just immediately gets her face punched off, like in the comics when she arrives. Same way as in the show, but no big battle from them. So TJ, take it away. Again, I know this was your favorite part. So, I mean, how great was it just seeing Eve kick ass?
It was awesome. Like my biggest thing with Eve this season has been, come on, I know it's coming, but give me something other than just like these pink sheets of glass. Eve, like you need something to, you're so wildly powerful. Give me some creativity here. Give me some creativity in the way that you're fighting because you have a lot more in your arsenal that you just are not using. It's like imagine the Punisher had all of these crazy guns at his disposal ready to use, and he's just like throwing knives at people. You know, like that's kind of what I felt like with Eve so far this season. And so getting to see her be creative, put up a fight against one of, if not the most powerful Viltrumites that's out there, it was really, really awesome. And again, this is one of those characters that I was like, even when her guts were out of her stomach flailing around, and even when her face was just gone, I kind of knew like, okay, Eve's not dying here. Eve's got more to do. There's more Eve that's coming. I don't think it's going to be a multiversal Eve. So she's going to be okay. But my God, what is happening to my poor girl? And then, oh my gosh, it's the moment like that I truly was most excited about, when you just see that body turning pink, glowing, the Adam Eve symbol going around as her body is rebuilding herself in her subconscious, because we know she's got these intense powers that she hasn't fully been utilizing, and we then learn later on, but I'm referencing it now anyways because it just seems like the perfect time to talk about it. Much like Jean Grey from the X-Men has had her powers locked away since she was a little kid because they're simply maybe just a little too powerful. She could do anything. And so there's been these barriers in place, which I didn't know about. And so that was really cool to hear about. And just getting to see the power inside, like that's one of my all-time favorite things, is like when the hero levels up. You know, when the hero levels up and now the villain are in for something that they were not expecting. And that's what we get to see here with Eve. We get the first true taste through 3 seasons. We get the first true taste of Eve's power in this one.
Yeah, and I mean she is legitimately omnipotent when she is in this state, like in her origin issue. And I don't know if they added this line in her or her special, the series special, but the doctor who created her straight up is like, yeah, without these blocks you would be omnipotent and like just all power. Like she can,
it might have been
change.
there and I just didn't remember it, but either way,
yeah, there was a few
it felt like a
changes.
cool reveal.
Yeah, like for instance, in the comic, they explain how Eve is literally like a living science machine. So like she just has inherent knowledge of all science, physics, all of that, which kind of goes to your point, TJ, of like seeing her just kind of doing the shields and stuff like that. Like she can make crazy shape that probably don't even exist, because again, like her powers are just completely on another level. And really quickly before we throw it off to Sean, to the Conquest point you brought up too, and like just seeing, like, first of all, that she can stop Conquest at all was absolutely insane. But an important point to remember about Conquest is he is like really old. Even in like Viltrumite standards, we hear him say that he knew Nolan as a kid. So that kind of gives you an idea of how old he is. And Viltrumites continuously get stronger as they grow older. So while we don't have like a for sure like how old Conquest is, again, it's reasonable to assume like he is not only way stronger than Invincible, but he's stronger than Nolan, and most likely is the strongest Viltrumite that they have in the Empire. But that's a little tangent that we can get into later. But Sean, again, Eve, and TJ brought us into it perfectly. Eve's resurrection, seeing her true power. Because I'll say, when I was reading the comic books, this happens almost exactly the same way. And I thought Eve was dead. I was like, oh man, they went there. And like, so did you have those same thoughts watching it, not having that back knowledge, and just your reaction to that whole sequence, her fight, her death, all that?
So like, I know she lives just because of the random comic like knowledge of the comics. Like I know they're a couple, like, again, we've talked about, they're revered as like the best couple in comics of all time. So I know, like, I guess I don't want to say it because I don't want to be a spoiler, but I know there's a future with them. But still seeing it, I was like, what? I was like, wait a second. Her guts are out. I don't, what's happening here? Like, what's going on? I was definitely distraught watching it because I was like, what's happening? But to add to what, like, you guys both said, to see her do some new abilities, not even just new like shapes with her powers, but like making the density higher in the air so he can't be as fast, and changing one of the like pink shapes into water, like mid, just to throw him off and stuff like that. I was like, oh, this stuff is like really cool. I was like, wow, they're definitely getting into stuff. Like even seeing her form that big, whatever it was like a big ass arrow or something. It felt so like Sailor Moon. It even had like the ding and stuff. I was just like, this feels like an episode of anime, you know. But yeah, seeing her like, and it's like I had no idea that she basically showed up and gets get killed. I'm definitely glad they let her put up a little bit of a fight. Yeah, I'm definitely way happier that they let her put up a fight. But seeing her full Dark Phoenix this shit was so awesome, like so cool to see. And I think the craziest part is she does that crazy blast and that still doesn't kill Conquest. I was like, this dude will never die. I was like, there's like burns off half of the skin on his body and he's just like, yep, I'm still going. This is nothing. I'm used to this.
Yeah,
thing. And I was just like,
which again shows
Cecil's a big stupid idiot, he might not.
Yeah, Cecil is a freaking idiot.
Whoa.
But again, just goes to show how powerful Eve actually is. Like, being able to burn the skin off of a Viltrumite is not an easy task to do. So, besides her being able to create these things, her just raw power is just insane.
Like that scene when they're trying to kill Alan and like all these crazy lasers and they're doing nothing to him. And I would imagine like a Viltrumite's skin and vulnerability is probably at least the same level of what Alan's is at this point. We don't really know, but I mean, we saw him kind of hold himself back in that fight with the Viltrumites, or when they have that big fight in the prison. You know, he's kind of like egging Nolan on to join the fight and everything like that. So it's kind of hard to tell how strong Alan is. Obviously, he's enough to hold his own in this, again, oncoming Viltrumite war and everything like that. But yeah, the pure power of her is wild, and it's so I didn't remember her going in that state in the special, but she does reference it in this episode.
At the end,
being
she does it. Yeah,
it happened before, and like deep traumatic moments can unlock these powers from me and stuff. But yeah, I'm sure we'll talk to what happens after she wakes up and the stuff with the clothes. I am very curious to see how that plays into factor going forward.
Sorry, the garbage man is out front here, so if you hear like loud ass noises in the background, that's why. But I want to bring this point up that Pierre brought up really quickly about the Cecil moment, which we're going to talk about. But I feel like, so when Eve goes to tell him like, oh, like you need to send me in here, Cecil's like, please don't make me do this. Like, he doesn't want to send her, which I thought was a really great change. In the book, he basically just tells her like, oh yeah, we can't, they're going so fast around the world, like we literally can't catch up, so like we have nowhere to portal you in. But here we see Cecil like actually like has feelings for them and like doesn't want to send her. So while I agree with Pierre's point of he was a little disappointed in Cecil's decision later on, I do think the show is making him a lot more.
Oh no, is he gone?
I wasn't sure if that was him or me, just because I'm my internet's been bad. But I'll pop in. I think they're doing a good job of humanizing him, which is what he was getting to there, because it does. There are so many moments where you can't help but look at him and be like, you know, this is a Nick Fury type figure that I don't agree with all the time. But yeah, you're back. It's a Nick Fury type figure that I don't agree with all the time. But he is on the side of good. Ultimately, he's trying to protect the Earth. Yeah. They do a good job of humanizing him in that regard. But there are just so many things where it's like, maybe you're going about this the wrong way with like all these android things he's creating. I don't know if we're going to talk about this one now or the end, but like his decision to ultimately try and keep Conquest alive, and even though he is in this big mega prison, you don't think maybe just checking like a little bit of intel, talking to Mark for like 3.5 minutes, and you'll realize that this is not a dude that will talk. This is a dude that will just enjoy his torture until one day he's good enough to get out, and he will get out and terrorize the world again. Like, there's
Cecil was watching that fight. I don't know what went on in his mind to think that he could possibly talk or get anything out of Conquest.
Like, there just doesn't really seem like a win in this scenario. Like, either he's not going to talk and he's just going to be like, haha, torture me, yes. Or he's going to break out and destroy the world. Like, those are your two most realistic options by far here. So Cecil's making some bad calls. And I want, to be pro Mark in all of these scenarios, but I fear he's going too darky on the other side of things here as well towards the end. So we're certainly getting carried down a dark path.
He's definitely a lot more.
There's
like
a worse third option. That the Viltrumites come to Earth and then they free Conquest, and then the Viltrumites also have Conquest too.
Yeah,
that sounds like the worst.
Reading my mind. I was gonna ask you. So now that Conquest failed, I think I might have cut out. Am I good?
You're good.
You're good.
Am I back? Okay.
Yeah.
But do you think that who are they gonna send next? You think they're gonna send someone after Conquest now that he failed?
I think the next logical thing, if your most powerful guy fails, is you got to send in a squad. And so if it's not everybody coming, I think it's going to be a group, because if you send one guy who's your strongest guy and it doesn't go well, you're going to have to send more.
True. Even though they only have
point
like
sending
10
his backup.
people.
No point sending his backup.
I mean, there's no backup. He's the dude. Sean, what do you think? I really like what you're saying about them coming to break him out, because I mean, then we got big problems.
Because here's the thing I'm wondering. Like, do they have any way they're tracking their army, since it's such a limited army? And they only have, it's like, there's 50 of them left or whatever. At this point, there's probably like 45 for the season. But like, so they send those two to execute Nolan. They don't come back. Do they just wait? And they don't come back? They're like, they're probably dead. Like, how do they know this? And I feel like such an advanced civilization, like, they have to like know what's up. And obviously I haven't read anywhere clear to further in the comics, so it's like I'm wondering.
Alternatively, if they knew what was up to that extent, would they keep getting their asses kicked like this?
I mean, yeah, I don't like. It's hard because, for one, I'm sure they didn't expect Alan the alien, because at that point they didn't know Alan. I mean, I guess they were testing on him and they knew he was somewhat strong or whatever, but they probably thought, oh, 2 Viltrumites.
Well, the Unopens were,
and then a Viltrumite that's chained. He was like, Nolan was completely shackled in. Like, they probably didn't think that what was going to happen happened. It was kind of the perfect storm of Alan and Nolan secretly planning this thing, mostly Alan, but secretly planned this escape, and the battle beast of it all definitely helped. And with Conquest, like, he could have killed Mark. Like, that's the very real situation, is he could have killed Mark at numerous times for sure. But he was just having his fun, his sick, weird, twisted fun with just having a fight that was worth his time, so that's what, like, I want to know if they like know if their people are still alive, or if they just like wait and they're like, well, I guess he's dead. Because if they knew he was still alive, or if they saw him like die and then come back, and they're like, okay, we got to go get him, or send a squad, or it's like, do they send the remaining like what do they do at this point? Like, the whole knowledge of knowing that there's only a select few left definitely adds this new wrinkle to this like oncoming Viltrumite war and everything like that. But I'm interested to see like how they handle it. Like, obviously Earth is a very big thing that like they want to take care of, Because even like what Conquest says, he's like, yeah, they just sent me and said, take everything out. We don't care. So that's what I'm like mainly wondering about. Like, what are they like? Is Earth their biggest problem? I mean, obviously they don't really know about the coalition of planets, at least to the extent of the plans they have. And now breaking out Nolan, having Invincible as like, when the fight comes, I'll be there and everything like that. So it's like, I don't know. It's that's like the thing too. It's like, I was wondering how the Viltrumite of it all was going to play into this season. And obviously Conquest was the big thing, and Nolan and Alan breaking out. But like I said, I have no idea like how this is going to pan out. Like after seeing the Invincible War, you're like, man, if more than what the mark showed up of like trained hundreds of years Viltrumites come to Earth, oof. It's not going to be a good
time. Imagine a multiversal army of Conquest.
Oh my god!
Oh my!
I didn't even think about that.
Jesus. Oh my gosh! But we got to talk about this. I think I've said this multiple times at this point, but this is for sure my favorite part of the episode because this is just crazy to me. But we're speaking about how sick and twisted Conquest is this whole time. But we get this crazy reveal of this like weird intimate conversation between him and Mark where he's like, I'm so lonely. Like that is not in the book at all. Like he is just a pure psychopath. There is no any indication that he has any deeper feelings about anything. But I don't know. I'm on the fence of how I feel about this. And honestly, it's definitely because I read the books. So I want to get your guys' take on this. Obviously, this isn't going to redeem Conquest and like all the terrible things we saw him do in this episode. But did that little speech about him, like just all the Viltrumites being scared of him and how he's so lonely, like, did that do anything for you guys to be like, oh, like I kind of can see where Conquest is coming from right now? TJ, I'll throw it off to you first. What did you think of this whole lonely speech?
I definitely didn't make me see where he was coming from or anything. Like, he's still an asshole, but it was really cool to see. I guess taking back what I said, you can understand without it being used as an excuse. But it did add a layer of depth to his character that I think was explored further than just that conversation in itself. Like it came up as well when he was fighting with Eve. Like he was like, this is a weakness. This makes you weak. Look how much you care about her. But he was also legitimately jealous. He was jealous.
True.
He was
That's
like,
a great point.
This is a connection that you have that it's like, it's very interesting to see this. Like he wanted that. He wanted a companion to terrorize with.
Dang, I didn't even think about that. I love that.
And so like that's kind of how I took it was, I almost kind of wish I had your life. You're pretty strong too. You're not as strong as me, but you're pretty strong. You got this little connection. If I don't wish I had it, I at least I understand your life. I get why you enjoy it. I get why you like these lower life forms is basically what he said. Coming to almost like the same conclusion that Nolan did, right? Of I miss my wife.
Yeah, exactly.
Maybe these humans aren't what the Viltrumites have been taught that they are. And I think it kind of does maybe speak to a little bit of a Viltrumite is not inherently bad. It's the propaganda of their planet and what they have been trained and ingrained in their brains since they were born.
Damn, dude, you cooked that. You thought about that in ways I never have, and I really love that parallel that you just made with, like I said, I never even considered when Conquest like kind of makes fun of him for that weakness. Like you said, he's actually jealous. But Sean, what did you same thing, this lonely scene, which I'll say my thoughts really quickly before throwing it off to you. Coming from the book, and I hope you will disagree with me, but honestly, I like the scene because it's like just so interesting why they would make such a drastic change. But honestly, I kind of like that like in the book, Conquest is just a psycho. Like there's no reason for it. Like he just loves violence. And to me, like having the whole lonely thing takes away from that a little bit. But what do you think as a fresh viewer? How did you read that scene?
It's funny because like as TJ was talking, I was like, oh, it makes the Nolan of it all makes so much more sense of how he became attached to like Earth and getting a wife, having a kid, and then doing it again on another alien planet. Like he's realized that these attachments, and now he's realizing it with Alan too. It's like he's realizing these attachments actually make you stronger rather than make you weaker. And it's probably why the Viltrumites are dying off. Honestly, it's probably their like zeitgeist cultist kind of way of thinking that they're like the master species of the universe, and that only they should survive, and everyone should bend the knee to them.
And not just
I don't think
towards outside of their own culture, but within their own culture.
Yeah,
all that matters is strength. If you are not strong enough, you're gone. And so it eliminates the likelihood for people to blossom late in life. It eliminates the possibility for people to build families and things like that. And so if from just like a pure population building standpoint, it's like you said, it kind of makes sense that they're dwindling if they have no inherent sense of community. What is keeping them alive other than their strength? And if among them there is no community and there's a whole bunch of strong ones, there's bound to constantly be revolt. And it just like, sure, it'll lead to survival of the fittest. And I'm sure it is all the just strongest Viltrumites left. But what about all the other ones?
Yeah, it's a
Very
really
true.
good point.
And
I don't think the speech made him less of a psycho. I think it made him more of a psycho. in
really?
ways, because you got to think about it. This dude's lived probably close to like 1,000 years or something, and of course he's gonna have these like weird thoughts of like, they didn't even give me a name. I'm merely just like Conquest. That's all I meant to them is to take over planets and kill them. And the thing that makes me think that he's a psycho still is that he tells this to Mark because he thinks Mark's going to die. And he's like, you'll take us to your grave. And that's the only person he'll ever tell, because it's someone who will never be able to tell anyone else. And that's what makes him a psycho.
I would say, yeah, that honestly, the way you frame that does add a whole new kind of brutal layer to that. But again, I don't hate it by any means. I think it interests me to see where that could go. And I think that it has a lot of parallels to this kind of darker turn that we're going to see from Mark. Like you brought this up earlier, Sean, with that in the previous episode with Powerplex, when he's like, this is all your fault. And we see the other heroes kind of look at him like, oof, you know what I mean? Like, kind of is your fault, So the point you brought up earlier, Sean, I think we are going to be seeing a little bit more of people being more afraid of Mark. I mean, it's hard not to be when you saw like 18 versions of him destroying the world all over the place. But we're already running out of time here, so I'll add on Rex's funeral to this. If you guys have any points about Rex's funeral, like that whole thing. But speaking of a darker turn, the way Conquest goes out in this episode, Mark just completely loses it and just
gone.
Like, oh, this happens exactly the same in the comics. Yeah, literally. And it's like, it's exactly the same, like almost panel for panel how it happens, but seeing it in live, like in motion, like him just like repeatedly, holy crap. So again, kind of similar to like how this whole thing began. Did you guys think Mark was going to lose it like that? Like, did you think, especially after last episode when he decides to kill Levy, even though he wasn't able to, were you guys expecting it to be like him to go that far with it? TJ, I'll throw it off to you first. And also too, do you think Mark can come back from this? Like, not saying he's turning like full villain, but after killing someone that brutally, do you think that Mark can kind of come back from that?
I do. I mean, if we are assuming that Nolan is going to be having a redemption arc, Mark is still way in far more shallow waters than Nolan is at this point. So Mark still has not done anything bad other than kill bad guys, which is arguable that's not even
bad. I wouldn't say
so,
redeemable, more so just like, I guess, mentally.
Can he get out off
the
path?
Yeah, like we've seen him struggle, like when he thought he killed Levy, like that obviously really affected him. Do you I guess that's more so what I mean, not redemption, but do you think mentally he'll be able to recover from this?
I do, because we are seeing him in these really dark places, except for the moments when he's with Eve. And so I do still think there are lots of opportunities for Eve and or Debbie to still be knocking some sense into him. And so if we're looking at this blue suit arc, kind of like the Venom symbiote arc, where we're getting a little darker Peter Parker, a little darker of a Mark Grayson, I still think he has enough people in his life who can keep him on the proper path, especially considering even though he's very darkly clouded, like we said, he hasn't crossed any lines yet. Like that was a terrifying battle with Conquest, but ultimately, if he didn't kill Conquest, what was going to happen to the planet? It was all going to be gone. Everybody he loved and the entire populace of Earth was going to be gone. It's caught between a rock and a hard place, but it's not really a decision there. You got to do what you got to do. And so without having crossed any lines, he's on a dark path. He's in a dark place. But I think there are still enough people in his life in the light that are going to be able to pull him out of it.
Very well said. And again, something we talk a lot about with Eve and Debbie. But Sean, same thing. Again, we saw how much him thinking that he killed Levy affected him. Do you think that his embrace of his darker qualities is something that he'll be able to come? And again, I don't mean to say this is like he's going to become a villain, but just, do you think he'll stay on this darker, more brutal path, or do you think that there's a way for him to come back to his more morally sound standings that we've seen in season 1 and 2?
I think there'll be some sort of middle ground. Now, his statement at the end of the episode, which we talked about a little bit, that makes me scared for like when he finds out Cecil kept Conquest alive. Is he going to kill Cecil? Like, that would be crossing the line, even though Cecil did something irreputably stupid and probably going to cause some major problems for everyone involved. Him killing Cecil because of that, I think, would cross the line. But I do think it's kind of a new normal for him in a way, where when some of these threats shows up, I think he knows now he needs to kill them. And I like, we've been talking about the Viltrumites this whole episode. Like, you think he's going to let them live? Like, no. The only way to get rid of them is to kill them. That's the only way to get them to stop. So it's, I think it's gonna be more of a middle. I think he might cross some lines, maybe in upcoming seasons. Like, I don't know, whatever may happen. Like, we talked about how Cecil asked him to lead the Guardians of Globe, and we were kind of all like, oh, we'd love to see him lead the Guardians of Globe. Whether or not that's the case in future seasons, obviously TJ and I have no idea. Obviously you have some idea of what's coming.
I don't know anything, man.
Get out of here.
I'm just along for the ride.
It would be like a very good dramatic storytelling if he eventually does go, yes, Eve and I are joining the Guardians. I will lead them. And then eventually, obviously, he finds out that Cecil kept Conquest alive. That's gonna I know a lot of people are like, oh yeah, like Invincible did their own Civil War kind of event this season. I think that will be the Civil War, especially with these weird, like Viltrumite level Reanimen he's building. Like, I know he's building them for the oncoming Viltrumites, but he's definitely also building them for Mark. Like let's be real.
he saw how easily he ripped them apart in what was it, episode 1, episode 2, and like you just said, I mean, Mark, that whole thing basically came down to because he hired Darkwing to like be on the Guardians. So imagine how Mark's going to react when and imagine how he's going to react when he learns that he kept Conquest in a freaking prison. Which, like, Cecil, did you not learn your lesson from Omni-Man? Like, we saw, I think it was this season too, when we saw the flashback with Cecil, and they're like, yeah, he's like, that dude is completely lying. And Cecil's like, well, let's see what happens. So it's like, dude, like, try and learn from your mistakes at least a little bit. But again, so we're already at
one thing before we move on past that, of like Mark's dark place that I think is really important to consider, like from like a psychological level, that I think is so interesting about how he differs from someone like a Superman within Superman's universe, because I think Superman's no kill rule is so important, you know, because his purpose is to be a beacon of hope for humanity, of like always maintaining the ideals of humanity. And for the most part, dependent on the story, he also lives in the context of a world with the Justice League, where they are far more competent than Cecil's Guardians of the Globe. And they're a lot more very, very powerful people to protect the world from threats. And so like his no kill rule makes a whole lot of sense. But when I look at Mark and I look at Invincible, where the world is constantly being pelted with threats, not just within the world, you know, he should have a no kill rule when it's somebody like Powerplex. He should not be killing Powerplex. But when you are essentially the sole protector of the Earth for a whole bunch of oncoming threats that are not just almost as strong as you, but actively more powerful than you, and no one else other than you can come anywhere close to stopping them. Bringing it back to like we talked about last week, it reminds me of Avatar: The Last Airbender, when in season 3, Aang is meditating. He's trying to talk to all the past Avatar, and they're all like, bro, you got to kill Ozai. You got to kill the Fire Lord. You got to end this war. You're the only one who can do it. And ultimately he doesn't. But there's something that Avatar Yang Chen, the last airbending Avatar, Air Nation Avatar prior to Aang, said, even though as an airbender, you're a pacifist, you don't want to kill a human, you don't even want to kill an animal, you're a vegan, you're not going to eat, you're not going to do anything that harms the world, but you're also the Avatar, so you have to sacrifice your own spiritual needs for the needs of the entire world, because it's your job to protect it. That's Mark's job. Mark is the only one who can protect the Earth. So ultimately there's going to have to be times that it's like, even if morally you don't want to do something, you're going to have to, as the sole and only one standing between the world and, you know, total and utter annihilation. Sometimes you're going to have to do what you got to do.
Yeah, Mark has to make the hard choices. And I think that's really the overall lesson that he has learned this season, is that one, there's consequences to everything. Even saving people comes at great cost. Example, Powerplex. And like you said, he's realized now that he is going to have to make those hard choices, whether he wants to or not, because if he doesn't, another Conquest, another Angstrom, like, so to, you know, to Sean's point too of his last lines of this season, I mean, how can you blame the guy, right? Like you just said, TJ, he's the most like he's basically the only one, even though he constantly is getting his ass kicked, he is the only one that even stands some kind of chance to protect, you know, again, Conquest, who's standing up? Immortal? Come on now. Come on. There's no one even close to that. But want to we have to get into these teases that we were left with, because I have a lot to say about one of them. My nerd, and I got my tinfoil hat on like crazy. But again, I don't really have much to say about this, except that it's just terribly sad, and it just really drives home Rex's sacrifice even more. But before we get to the teases, do you guys have either one of you have any points about the Rex funeral? Sean, I know you mentioned, the part with him and Eve, which I love as well, just kind of emphasizing their relationship.
There was something that I think I was watching Heavy Spoilers Breakdown, which I know you helped work on and everything like that for this season. So shout out you guys. But
thank you.
So Rudy changing his name to Rex.
Boo, Paul. Boo, Heavy Spoilers. We're still in our fight. We're in our war right now. But you will be able to catch it on the Agents of Fandom channel on Wednesday, March 26th for our episode 5 and 6 breakdown of Daredevil Born Again. So stay tuned. But boo! Boo!
Amazing.
Sean's like, are you done now?
So, yeah. Are you done with your petty war? Just kidding. Rudy changing his name to Rex, robot. There's a really good point from the finale of season 2 where they see that multiversal version of the Guardians of the Globe, and Eve calls robot Rex, and obviously he uses Rex's body to his image to create a new body. So now I'm like, oh, how does Rex become robot in the future in this weird multiverse? And you're like, oh no, Rudy just calls himself Rex. So putting that together, I was like, oh, that's interesting. And it's also kind of a weird way to keep Rex alive with not being alive. I am wondering if when he gets older, will Jason Mantzoukas come back to voice him? I am wondering that.
I would love that, because we've talked about how we love him as Rex. But I just lost my train of thought for a second. Yeah, TJ, I'll throw it off to you because I can't remember what I was going to say. Rex's funeral, do you have anything to add on to that?
No, I thought Sean's point was really, really great there. I did feel like from a storytelling standpoint that it felt a little bit out of place, like a little rushed, and it would have been cooler. So the problem is I don't have a solution either. It just felt like a little out of place, a little rushed, where that would have been nice to be a moment we kind of sit with for a while, but it felt like it just happened so quick and we're moving on past it. So it did feel like a little bit of a hard left turn for me, but in a vacuum, I thought it was a really great, powerful scene.
Yeah, and I just remember what I was going to say, but to your point, Sean, about with the Rex from the future, like robot in the future that we saw in last season. See, this is why I love when we get to discuss these things, because again, since I've read the books, that's something I didn't even think about, because it's like I've read ahead, so it's like I didn't even think about that. But yeah, for first time watchers, that, like you said, you're led to believe like, oh, does Rex become robot? Again, something I never even thought of. So I love how the show is able to do that, like make different things, different reveals, different for different audiences. But that kind of goes into another thing that me and Sean were talking about with one of these teases. So let's get into these. We get a lot of teases for season 4, and probably one of my favorite, one I'm most excited for, is the Battle Beast. We see some people go grab our boy, preface for this whole episode, if anyone is interested, this entire episode is going to be covering Invincible number 62 all the way through 65. But this Battle Beast scene actually doesn't happen until issue number 75. So I thought it was interesting that they kind of went a little bit further ahead to add that little tease in there. But we also get Angstrom and the technicians, I think they're called. We get a little Sequid tease. And the one that I really want to talk about is Darkblood. Damon Darkblood, right? Is his name?
Damien Darkblood.
The demon guy. But I'll throw it, TJ, I'll throw it off to you first. Which of these interested you the most, and like which one are you most excited to see in season 4? And also, do you think any of these, I mean, we know obviously we have more seasons left, but do you think any of these are even going to come close to Invincible War or the Conquest arc that we've just went through?
I think the only, like, I don't know about any of these specific teases reaching it. I do think for me, what probably gets there is, and maybe this is the Battle Beast one that lines us up in that direction, is, give me Mark and Battle Beast, Alan, Nolan, Eve, put him in a line and have him charge at all the Viltrumites and see what happens. That's, to me, something that I think can basically match or exceed what we've seen so far. The Angstrom stuff, if it was not Sterling K. Brown, I would have a lot less interest in it, because I love Sterling K. Brown and I love his performance as the character. Pardon me, I'm holding back a cough. I would be a lot less interested, but because I love him so much, I am still bought in. Like, okay, you're giving me more of them, great, I'm here. But it did feel a little bit like the Angstrom stuff, if it wasn't for it leading to Invincible War, felt a little shoehorned in this season. But because Invincible War was so damn cool, it didn't really matter. And so the Angstrom stuff, I'm ready for that to be on the back burner for a while. The Sequids stuff, basically like a little Starro situation, doesn't do a whole lot for me. Like, oh no, all these people I got are controlled by Sequids underneath the world. Oh no. That didn't do a whole lot for me. But I think the Battle Beast stuff, potentially, where he goes, and ideally getting him, you're not going to get him on your side, but essentially if you can think of him like a Hulk-like character and just point him in the right direction and hope he takes out your enemies, then great.
Right.
The Darkblood stuff is the coolest to me, because this is even though we've seen the character before, this is feels like a relatively new corner for us to be exploring, and I'm very excited about. I feel like the mystical elements, the hell elements of it all, to me, give a very cool twist to the story that we haven't really dealt with that side of things very much. We've had pure raw power with the Viltrumites. We've had corruption from the GDA to these various gangs that Mark has to deal with. We have people rising from the ashes of his own decisions and becoming his villains, but we haven't really had much on the mystical side of things. And so I'm really looking forward to diving into that corner. Sean, I remember you brought it up a little bit earlier, and as something we were going to talk about later, and I feel like this is kind of part of the teases, because I think it happened right before the Sequid portion. What is the deal with the rainbow goop on Mark's clothes after Eve takes them off?
Yeah, that's in the comic too. And I mean, it's not really a spoiler, but they don't really explain that. It's kind of just a moment in the comic, and again, it happens exactly the same way. But the way that I kind of always read it, and especially going back to that when doing the heavy spoiler stuff, I feel like it kind of just is supposed to exemplify like them coming together. Like, obviously they've had this relationship up until now, but like with her dying, coming back, Mark surviving, like their love is just like growing, and like that translates into Eve's powers, so it's like they're like merging together. But also
I just wanted to make sure it was some kind of like cool imagery and not impending doom.
No, yeah, it's love. It's good. It's a good thing, I think. But I think Paul brought up in the video that it's like also shown to kind of exemplify Eve's powers changing a little bit, because not to get into too much stuff, but similar to Alan, when she experiences this like massive trauma, it gives her a little power boost, which this is really funny and like really stupid too. But in the comics, when she comes back to life, when her and Mark are in the hospital, Mark comments because Eve made her boobs bigger when she remade her body. So you can see like, again, like it kind of shows like she gets a little power boost when these kind of things happen. But I mean,
my kind of interpretation of it as well was almost that, multicolored ooze was the blood that was stained on his outfit. That it was all the blood that was stained, and it got transferred into this, mystical love juice. But that's what it was. She didn't create
love
it.
Juice.
But she didn't create it. But pardon me, love ooze. She didn't create it, but it was changed from all the bloodstains from battle on his suit.
I love that. I mean, I think it's totally like open to interpretation. I think that's what the scene is kind of meant to do, is, get your own interpretation from it. But I will also say, just small little change in the book, the same exact scene, like literally they copy pasted it, but they show a flower growing from the love ooze. So, I mean, I don't really know what that means, but again, I just always related it to, again, their relationship blossoming into a new era. But Sean, all these teases, we talked a little bit off camera about Battle Beast already, but which one of these really excites you? And again, do you think any of these will kind of hit that level that we've seen this season? And I guess that's another question too. Like, me and you both agree this is our favorite season. How can they top it for you?
I mean, obviously the big thing is, I think, Viltrumite War, but it's like, I don't see that happening next season. I don't see it happening for a bit, but I also have no idea. It's crazy because I saw the Eve thing as a very negative thing. I mean, maybe I'm alone in this, but as soon as I saw it, I was like, oh no, something's wrong. I was like,
Sean saw Love
maybe
Ooze for the first time and was like, oh no, what's happening?
He said something bad happened.
Yeah, Love Ooze is a positive thing, I guess. My bad.
What's this coming out of my body?
Does that come out anywhere else? No. This reminds me of Never Back Down.
It's like, it reminds me of Never Back Down. No, it reminds me of No Way Home, though, actually, when he's like, does that come out of you?
That's why I said
come out anywhere else? Yeah, that was
definitely reminds me of Never Back Down,
reference.
for sure.
I understood that.
Definitely Never Back Down. I guess for favorite teases, I am pretty stoked on the Angstrom thing, because I like that he is like a reoccurring villain, and they've proven that he is, he's got a plan, and he's a very dangerous villain for sure. I think he underestimated Mark, and I think that was his big downfall this time, for sure. Even though he was pretty prepared, but I think once they finally got to the thick of it, he definitely underestimated like willpower and determination of Mark. But I'm very excited to see what like the technician, like what they want with Angstrom. Like, and I'm interested to see how that plays out eventually too. But I guess the Sequid thing too is like, I think it's cool because obviously it's a thread from season 2, and we saw like how once they latch on to someone, it's a bad time. Because they almost died on that mission,
Yeah, the Sequids, I'll say you should not underestimate the Sequid. Like, I know they're kind of like goofy little, like, squid, like you said, the Starro kind of parallel.
Stupid little fuckers,
You would think, but I mean, that you should not underestimate.
Dangerous, stupid little fuckers.
Yeah, so I feel like that's going to be like an immediate threat in season 4. It definitely feels like. Whereas like Angstrom, like what TJ said, I feel like that's kind of more on the back burner, and will be kind of like a slow burn until we get him back into the fold, I would imagine, because now he's got to help the technicians before getting his his fixation of killing this one Mark out of his system. The Damien Darkblood thing I think is super interesting, because I kind of like did a little research after, and they don't do anything with him after the first issues, like of what we see in season 1. After that, he's like just not in the comics ever again. So I'm like, oh wow, this is such a cool way for Robert Kirkman to be like oh, I can revisit the story. I can flesh it out like I was never able to, or maybe he realized like maybe I should flesh out the story now that I have a chance to. So, and I thought he was an awesome character in season 1, and then he's just like banished
to
hell,
confirm
like,
this, because I had the same question. This is like the demon detective from season 1 who was like looking into Nolan.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. This is like you said, and we see him in season 1 investigating the Guardians of the Globe murder. And then just like he does in the comic book, just kind of disappears and is not really seen of again.
But he says this thing of like, I found someone on the surface level that's powerful enough. And it's like, who is he talking about? Like, that's why I'm like, it was such a good post-credit tease, because for one, for any comic viewers, they're like, oh, this is completely new. And then for anyone like TJ and I, you're like, okay, oh yeah, it's that guy from season 1. Cool. And then you're like, who is he talking about? It's like a good tease.
What if the
like,
devil possesses Conquest?
Oh man!
And he found Conquest because he died. Conquest died and his soul left the plane, but then friggin' Cecil revives him and has him in this little cage. And so he's like, oh shit, now I can go possess this guy. And we're going to have a devil possessed Conquest. When he first started talking about, before he used he pronouns, I thought he was talking about Eve. I thought they were like, oh shit, there was this power surge. Eve is the one powerful enough. But my thoughts were essentially he was talking about Mark, or he was talking about because of how much stronger he's grown, or Conquest. And it was like, oh, hey, motherfuckers, I can use this guy.
Yeah, this is by far the most interesting for me. Like Sean said, this is not in the books. This is all new territory. So I have no idea what Kirkman is cooking with this, but I do have a couple ideas that, again, I have my tinfoil hat on. Like you said, Sean, you looked into this a little bit too. But so I'll make this as quick as I can, but little fun background information on Invincible is Kirkman actually originally was going to reveal Omni-Man as a villain in issue number 25, as opposed to issue number, I think 7 is when we see him kill the Guardians. And the reason he did that is because the editor at IDW, or Image, they told him, if you don't push this reveal up, you're not going to make it to issue 25. So he convinced him to move this Omni-Man's reveal way further in the story. And then obviously the last time we see Damon Darkblood is at the Guardian's funeral. And then he just disappears. So a lot of people think that Kirkman had Damon Darkblood playing a bigger role in his original story, but that kind of just shifted when he had to bring that up. So like that storyline just kind of got dropped. So it's possible we could be seeing the kind of like secret Damon Darkblood story that never got to originally be told, which would be absolutely great. But another thing, again, I got my tinfoil hat on. I went deep and nerdy on this one. There is a character, TJ, if you can bring up that picture I sent you. So there is a character named Set, who appears in the Guarding of the Globe series. This is Guarding of the Globe from 2010. And so Set is actually the leader of the Order, who we met from Mr. Lau. And I think maybe episode 3, we see the Order at the end. Set is like the mysterious actual leader of this organization. And not much is known about this guy, but basically him and his brother travel to different worlds and compete with each other to take over these worlds. And in, I think it's issue 5 of Guarding. So you see his face here. And the reason I bring the picture up is because I feel like his face very much resembles the other demon that Damon Darkblood was speaking to, the like dude in the robe. I could be off on this, but face looks very similar to me. And there's at the end of Guarding of the Globe number 5, we see Set in a very similar situation that we see Damon Darkblood, and he's speaking to someone like a seance kind of, mystical kind of thing. We don't see him talking to anybody, but he's talking to his father, which is it's never revealed who that is. And we don't really learn much else about that. But again, it's like his whole mission is basically to take over the world, like without using his like demon crazy powers. So to me, the scene had a lot of parallels with that, and while it is a different character, like none of that includes Daemon Darkblood, I feel like they could possibly be going down that route with maybe merging Set's kind of motives and storyline with Daemon Darkblood. But again, to me, the most interesting part of it is, like TJ said, Invincible comics do not really feature magic. I would say probably the closest is Mr. Lau with like the mystical dragon spirit. So if the show is going to start leaning a little bit, I would be super interested to see how, like, again, because that's just not in the books. There's really no magic or supernatural things. So, I mean, I know that was really long, and who knows if any of that is true, but the most interesting thing I wish we got Kirkman on this season. We could have that's like the question I would have asked him for sure. Like, dude, what is up with Dark?
Well, I'm sure we weren't able to do the live show, but I'm sure we'll be able to talk to him again soon. So that'll be the number one on the list.
If you do, you have to ask. Yeah, you got to ask him about Daemon Darkblood and bring up Set too, because I think that I felt like I like gave myself a little pat on the back for that one, because I was like, that's a good ass.
Was Set teased in that scene with the Order? Was he there?
No,
do you remember?
Was not there. Mm-mm. Yeah, he's definitely not there. But that's what I mean. He's like the, you think so and so is the leader, but he's like really calling the shots. Again, if anyone's interested in more about the Order, Set, Guarding of the Globe from 2010 deals with that. He's also, there's a second volume that came out in 2012 of the same name, and he's involved in that as well. But the first run will give you all of the stuff about the Order, Set, all that good stuff. But we've already went way over time, which it's the finale, baby. Why not, right? Do you guys have anything else to say about season 4? Again, obviously we have these teases, but is there anything else that you guys are really hoping to see? Any theories? Of course, I'm a freaking psychopath, but TJ, I'll throw it off to you before we head out of here.
I really want to see more of the Alan the Alien and Nolan stuff. I'm really excited for the reunion between Nolan, Alan, and Mark, especially because at this point, Mark believes that Nolan is dead. So I think that's going to be a really exciting reunion. And then just more Adam Eve, man. Like, I'm excited to see Adam Eve level up and become more powerful and surpass all these Viltrumite assholes.
Let's do it. I mean, we don't even need Mark anymore. Just make it an Eve show. Sean, you got any theories? Anything we already kind of talked about? You said Viltrumite War, that kind of stuff. But anything else you're really hoping, or kind of like what TJ was saying with Eve? Is there any certain character or storyline that you hope gets a little bit more focus next season?
So I've seen people, like Robot made a comment about how when he was like helping Mark with the orbs that like belonged to Angstrom and he didn't know where they were from, he was like talking about how he was doing something more important. And I saw someone on Twitter say, "Oh, wait till you see what that is, because Robot's story is crazy." So I'm excited for that to happen eventually, because I don't want to know. So like I'm very interested to see what that is.
I've heard there's a lot that goes down with Robot too.
Yeah, so
I'm
like excited.
Without knowing anything, just like I keep cutting you off, and I'm sorry. I think there's like a slight internet difference, and so I feel like I hear a pause, and then it's not a pause, and I don't realize it till too late. So I really apologize. But I too have heard the same thing, that like there are multiple different Robot storylines that just like go crazy going forward.
Just gonna keep my face as blank as possible.
So I'm super stoked to see what that is. I think my biggest worry for the next season is how do they top the last 2 episodes of what we just saw? Because like that's a high bar, like insanely high bar. And you've even said it's your like favorite moments in the comics, period. Mm-hmm. So that's my big worry going into season 4 is like, how are they going to top this? And like I said, I really don't think the Invincible or the Viltrumite War is going to happen next season. unless I'm totally wrong, which I obviously
Honestly,
that can be the
I
truth.
didn't think we were gonna get Conquest and Invincible War this season. So they have continuously surprised me with how much they can fit into a season. And I mean, obviously, season 4 is not even done yet, so I'm not spoiling anything.
Right, they're working on it.
But if I were a betting man in Vegas right now, I'm gonna bet we're gonna end season 3 or season 4 with the Viltrumite War. And I mean the whole thing.
Okay.
Like how we went Invincible War Conquest. I think we're gonna hit all of that in like the last 2-3 episodes. And I'll even say I counted it out, which this is give or take. We know that well, Dwarf season 3 in terms of raising the stake. See, this is what I'm saying. Ghost Balls. I think if it feels like if he's saying that, it has to be Viltrumite War, right? But I calculated it out, and if we go from now all the way to Viltrumite War, it is roughly around the same amount of issues that we have covered this season. And like I said, I say give or take a few because we know from my nerd talking that, you know, Invincible likes to jump around a little bit. So I assume that there will be a couple added like later adventures or whatnot to kind of fill that out. But again, roughly, we would hit the same amount of issues we've covered this season. So it is possible. And like I said, if I was a betting man, that's where I'm putting my money.
Yeah, okay, well, then that's how you up this season. Okay, I'm no longer worried about that. But then what do you do after that?
I mean,
well, we gotta know how we get to the
stuff.
point of Invincible or of Immortal leading the world, right? Like we gotta eventually get there.
True. And
if we
from
even get
what
there,
we have right now, let's see. We have about like a quarter of the omnibus left. So I mean that's a season right there for sure.
2?
Yeah, so this is omnibus or yeah, the compendium, I guess, is the technical term.
And there's 3,
yeah,
right?
So we're on what'd you say?
How many compendiums are there?
3.
3. Okay, yeah, I thought it was 3. Okay.
There's 3 of them. And so like I said, we have like a quarter, like about this much left of Invincible.
And Invincible War is in that?
Yeah, Invincible War is like right.
Or sorry. The Viltrumite War is like part of that book.
Yep, Viltrumite War.
Okay.
Viltrumite War. If we get to the Viltrumite War, we still have all of this left.
Okay.
So
what?
Yes, I'm telling, dude. This is the type of show, but I really urge people, even if you don't read comics, like if you like the Invincible show, pick up the books. It is just a constant. I literally, with my first time, I read an entire compendium in one day. Just like I literally could not put it down. Like it's just every issue is just like another massive gut punch, massive reveal. Like every time you turn the corner, it's one of the best books I have ever read. The ending is one of the best endings I think to any story I've ever read in my life. So as great as the show is, I really urge while we wait for season 4, go pick up those compendiums and read it because the show is amazing, but the book is just as good. I don't want to say better because they do such a great job with adapting it. But we did it, boys. We did it. Another season of Invincible is in the books. It's behind us now, and it's so sad to see. But the one silver lining is that it was just absolutely so much fun doing this show with you guys. Me and Sean doing this again, bringing it back for our 3rd year now. TJ joining in on the fun on Agents of Fandom. Oh, it's just been absolutely amazing. Thank you to everyone that has tuned in over the course of these last 4 weeks, however long it's been. Our friend Pierre, shout out Pierre, that has been a champion in the comments. But we're going to have to leave you guys until next season. But don't worry, we have a lot of other things to keep you guys tided over with. Sean, as always, I'll throw it off to you first. Plug yourself. Tell the people what's going on. I know we have a great Newton Bros interview on the channel as we speak. Yes. What else we got coming down the pipeline?
Yeah, TJ and I got to spend almost an hour talking with the Newton Bros, and it was amazing. So if you haven't, go watch, listen to that. It's awesome. It's a very, very good time, and you can hear some cool insights into the work they did for Daredevil Born Again. These dudes are the biggest nerds, and the way they approach their craft is absolutely incredible and inspiring and amazing. And I got some questions for The Life of Chuck, which the teaser just dropped today. Neon movie starring a lot of MCU alum and stuff, but it's a Mike Flanagan project. It's an adaptation of a Stephen King short story. I've read the short story. The short story is amazing. It's one of my most anticipated movies of the year. I know there's a review on Ages of Fandom from Ryan because he saw it at TIFF last year. So yeah, I get stoked for that. And I have an Invincible Season 3 Ending Explained article coming to Collider. I believe it publishes tomorrow. So check that out. I have a few Daredevil articles on Collider up, a few more coming. I dive deep into the comic origins of Buck Cashman, which he's kind of Wilson's right-hand man in the show. He's like the new Wesley. And his comic origins are way different. And they go down a really weird, wild rabbit hole. So if you want to learn about that, that'll be up soon. I got some more reviews coming to Agents of Fandom as well. I think one coming next week, and more to come after that. And I think I will be joining TJ for The Last of Us after show on this same channel. So you'll get a lot more of me. And you think I have a lot to say about Invincible? Boy, do I have a lot to say about The Last of Us. I'm currently replaying The Last of Us Part 2 right now to prepare for the
first time or
that season of television.
Or a
oh
redo?
No, second time.
Okay.
Replay. Yeah. I played it right when it came out. So it's just kind of I want it fresh in my brain for when the season comes out. That's my plan. But yeah, other than that, Metalcore Nerds, we just switched to bi-weekly, so 2 shows a month. And you can check that out wherever you find podcasts. I just started doing a video version on YouTube, so you can search Metalcore Nerds in the YouTube and subscribe there and watch me there talk about similar things, but with just band dudes and band ladies.
Smash that subscribe button harder than Mark smashed Conquest's face in this episode. Ugh. TJ, let the people know the million things we got going on, and then also you can head us on out into the void.
Let's do it. So yeah, like Sean said, we're gonna have a lot of fun shows coming up in terms of interviews that we already have. You still want more Invincible coverage? You have our interview with Simon Rasiopa, the showrunner, and Robert Kirkman, of course, the creator. And then for Daredevil Born Again, we have the Newton Brothers, the composers. We talk about that. We talk about X-Men 97. We have our interview with Sana Amanat, the executive producer, Dario Scardapan, the showrunner, as well as my interview with Julius Ona, the director of Daredevil Born Again. And we're going to have some fun stuff coming for Andor in the future, hopefully for The Last of Us as well. So hit the like button, subscribe, hit the notification bell so you don't miss out on all of those shows. We still have 2 more episodes of Severance. We're breaking down tomorrow, Friday. We're going to be covering episode 9. The next week, we have the season finale, episode 10. We got Daredevil every Tuesday, except for in a couple weeks, they're doing a dual episode 5 and 6, dropping at once. And so we're going to do that the next Wednesday morning. And we got Paul, Heavy Spoilers, our Invincible nemesis, joining us for that one. We're going to have a lot of fun. This week for Daredevil, we have our former co-host, Adam Blevins, hopping back on to join us and talk about it. So a lot of really fun stuff coming. A lot of great articles coming, courtesy Sean and some other people as well. I want to shout out our newest agents. Sean's doing some incredible writing. We have our friend that we know. We just recently had him on the Your Friendly Neighborhood Spider-Man podcast. Chris Mills, Luminous Dagger on socials. He's going to be doing some writing for us coming up here really soon. Oh, yeah. And then I want to shout out Alex as well, who's been doing some work with Instagram and graphic design and really been making some really cool posts for us recently. So a lot of really good stuff. Follow us on socials at Agents Fandom on TikTok and Twitter, Agents of Fandom everywhere else. Thank you for tuning in, everyone, to the Beyond Invincible show. We'll be back next year. Sean and I, like he said, will be covering The Last of Us. We'll be covering Andor here on the podcast. We'll make sure to get Fat Thor in a lot more since we're going to have the Invincible show all done for. We're going to have to keep bringing him back in as much as we can so you guys don't miss him too much. And thank you all for listening throughout the course of this season. Like I said, we're back Friday for Severance, Tuesday for Daredevil, and we have more coming as well. Thank you so much for joining, everyone. On behalf of myself, TJ, Fat Thor, Sean, we'll see you next time. Peace.